Where we would go is insane. It would make this look like Howard's End. and I'm not talking just in terms of scale, but the fact that this is a new property, this is original, not based on anything, so thank you, man. I say no to reboots, say yes to robots. What I think is great is we have to lay so much rules down on this movie. We have to do the glossary in the beginning, tell you what the world was, what the drift is, blah, blah, blah. So in the second one, we can experiment a lot more. We can go to crazier places creatively. And I can guarantee you, it won't feel like Pacific Rim 2.0. It will feel like, holy crap, we haven't seen this ever. So we are going to very interesting places.
That's great. And can you describe any of those places in more detail?
Well, I can tell you, is very much the idea that is in this movie, that if you drift with a kaiju brain, you're drifting with all the kaiju brains. That's sort of central to the second movie. I don't want to spoil it however many years before it comes out. But there was a line of dialogue that I took out on this cut, where Newt explains that the kaiju are not carbon-based organisms, that they are silicon-based organisms. So their flesh is synthetic. You know, their coating, which he calls DNA, he used to explain that it was not DNA, but that it was a very complex code that both held information and cellular information. And so it was really interesting, except we had so many interesting things already. And we took it out, but again, that is the basis for that. Last piece that you may want to play with is that we sent Gypsy on the other side. So yes, there was a huge explosion and so forth, but some pieces of Gypsy stayed on the other side. So we're playing with a lot of that speculation. It's really, really fun where we're going.
That's great. Now, the last film that you directed that was released was in 2008. In recent weeks, you've been to Mexico and London, and the Hollywood premiere for Pacific Rim was last night. Do you feel like you've been on a little bit of an international victory tour?
It's been great because look, the movie connects with an audience. Is a movie that when people say what was the hardest thing to do, I always answer, like, technically, Hellboy 2 was incredibly complex. I may have done it with a little less than half the budget of this, but technically it was super challenging. 3 of the scenes depended on completely virtual characters, and Hellboy 2, I think, sadly or not, is going to remain one of the last times, if not the last time, that anyone employed as many makeup effects and animatronics in the history of fantasy cinema, because we went all out with that. So technically it was very complex. This movie, what is great is to see it connect with an audience, because I tried to keep the emotion and the adventure simple, not simplistic, but just simple, to have a very earnest, pure heart, and to see it connect has been a victory tour for sure. To see it play with an audience is great.
I think they liked it too.
Thank you.
Now, the film kind of grew out of a little bit of heartbreak, though, for you. This was a movie that came together very quickly after Mounds of Madness.
Well, let me elaborate on that, because that's the funny thing is I have been producing and co-writing Pacific Rim for 9 months almost before Mountains collapsed. I was doing both movies at the same time with the understanding, Thomas, I really believe Mountains was going to happen. And Thomas told, the head of Legendary, said, well, if it doesn't happen for some reason, would you then direct this, or if I wait for you? And I said, yes. He was very smart, because over those 9 months, I fell in love with the Jaegers, I fell in love with the kaiju, I was designing them, I was doing, we designed in my garage, in my mind cave, Gleek House. We have the guys working there every day. I would work with them every day, co-write with Travis. So by the end of 9 months, I was on Mountains, but at the same time I was saying, who is the son of a bitch that's going to take all this beauty and do it instead of me? And when Mountains collapsed on a Friday, I really was sort of honestly destroyed that weekend. And Monday, I went to Thomas and I said, I'm in. Are you prepared to greenlight it right now? And he, in one gesture that is like old-fashioned Hollywood, I've never experienced anything like it, he greenlit it right there. I had everybody there, lawyer or agent, all of that, and they started talking about terms. I said, no, we greenlight it right now on a handshake. It's gone, I'm doing it. I said, and he agreed, right there. I've never experienced anything like it. So I jokingly say, I was a widower on Friday, and Monday I was with a blonde in a Corvette going PCH. So I was a joyous actual to jump into this. And I think the one thing I can tell you, I've never enjoyed making a movie more than making this movie. And I think it shows. It's my most joyful movie I've ever done. I love the cast. I'm like out of a PR firm. I love everybody. Everything was great, and it's true.
Well, I think when you watch the movie, so many of the characters have facets to them that are very distinctly Guillermo del Toro.
Yes.
And I'm curious, how much of that was on the page, you writing these characters and creating these characters, and how did you work with the cast to bring them to life?
I started writing right from the get-go, from Travis's treatment together, and I made it a point that is not a secret anymore. You know, we were going towards this release date, and I made it a point that Rolly had been out of a Jaeger exactly the same amount I had been out of the director's chair. So I was literally jumping into a Jaeger. For example, I write Tentacles, or the father and son story, the little touches like that from a very personal point of view. There's a great scene between the father and the son that I took out. I didn't want to lag. I didn't want this to be one of those movies that is 2 hours and 50 minutes, you know, and the ass meter is going red, you know. But there was a great scene where the son said, I'm a great pilot, what else do you want? And he says, I want you to be a better person. And that's a preoccupation I have. It's something strange in me that since I was a kid, I've always thought, am I a good person? Am I acting right? And it's something that doesn't come in handy on the movie business, but it's something that is very personal to me. Mako's memory, you know, and the whole idea of her fear and her lack of trust. These are things that I write the good guys and the bad guys from me or from people I know.
Well, I think that it's that level of personal investment that people truly respond to in your work.
Thank you. I tell you, when I put out anything significant out in a movie, if you watch a DVD or a Blu-ray of one of my movies, I have supervised and approved every single thing on it. Every single thing. Because if I fork out the money to buy somebody's DVD or Blu-ray and I see a shoddy job, I hate that guy. I go. I spend, you know, and same with the toys and collectibles. I approve them. I send them back. I tell them, change this has not enough articulation. All that stuff on Sideshow Collectibles, all of that. And in the movie, what you see, obviously, I'm invested in every single effects shot, all the way, micromanaging, doing this and that. But very importantly, I wanted this movie to be a test case to prove that to post-convert a movie 3D, if the director is involved the whole way for 40 odd weeks, the 3D can be bitching. And this is what happened is we asked the studio for the right amount of time. Instead of 16 weeks conversion or 20 weeks conversion, we asked double that almost. I was there for every single shot you see, I approved it. Every single shot you see, I approved the compositing, I approved the edges, the rotoscope, the depth, everything. Because I don't think people come to a movie and if you didn't do everything, then they are not being treated right. You need to make the movie be responsible for everything. I even built this theater.
In talking about design and the look of the film, obviously the look of the Jaeger and the look of the kaiju are key to so much. Could you talk a little bit about your inspiration points for those creations?
Yeah, anytime I design a monster, the last thing I want to reference is a monster. Because that only renders a monster that looks like another movie monster. We were referencing, one of the rules we said is let's preserve the man in a suit proportion, because we're honoring the kaiju A-gun, you know, so we wanted, if I was making this movie in 1968, you still could make this movie. It would look a little funkier, but it would be fun. And I wanted to keep those proportions, even with the multi-limbed kaiju, you could do it. You could puppeteer it with the upper limbs or the lower limbs. And the second thing is I say, let's reference, once we are in, we reference things that are real. Minerals, bones, textures from other animals, rhino skin or reptile skin. And so you can have a very outlandish design that is rooted in reality. The first thing we do is do silhouettes. That's the most important element of any design. And with the Jaegers and the Kaiju, we would approve a lot of silhouettes and do an American Idol and say, this one doesn't go to finals, this one doesn't go to Vegas. And finally, you end up with a few that are completely the ones you like the most. With the Jaegers, we were saying let's not reference another robot. Let's reference real technology. So if you go, we reference, for example, a 5-story high flying fortress in Moscow that never flew, a plane that was gigantic, nuclear reactors, submarines, the plating of World War II technology, you know. And for example, each of the Jaegers was designed to echo particular things from their country. Gypsy Danger was a mixture of Art Deco buildings, like the Empire State Building, and John Wayne. I wanted Gypsy to move like a gunslinger, you know, to have that little hip sway and completely American. The Russian Jaeger was meant to be like a walking nuclear reactor, like have the nuclear reactor on top and look like a T-series tank from the Russian army, painted in that sort of camouflage green. And so on and so forth. The Australian Jaeger was like a Land Rover, very masculine, very testosterone driven, painted like the Outback camouflage, and so on and so forth. And that way you are giving them personality. Did I answer your question, Nando?
It was interesting.
And the kaiju are meant to be, they step in and you know what they do. You know, the knife head, well, he's not going to serve you tea and talk about the weather, you know. The other kaiju, Leatherback, he's like a bouncer, like a huge gorilla-like figure, you know. So he's not very smart, but he's very, very good at beating things, you know. And they instantly do that because what I wanted and this is something I don't know how to explain it quite well, is when I was a kid and I would go to a movie, an escapist movie I would like to escape. One of the movies that was important for me was Sultan Korda's Jungle Book, which was a real fantasy. I could escape. I wanted this movie to have the look of almost a fantasy movie rather than a modernistic, super cool sci-fi. I wanted to make it really weird looking, super saturated colors, and to allow for kids to feel the awe of watching a movie like I felt when I was a kid watching a kaiju movie. So, you know, like you're 25, 30, or you're 8 years old. Those two things clash, you're like, wow, you know? And that was the main drive. I wanted to keep everything else simple. I think that we equate, this is a very complicated, simple movie, you know? And I wanted to keep both elements there.
Yeah, I think that's true. And you've also talked about how this film is supposed to be joyful. And it's interesting to see that at a time where so many of our blockbusters are gritty and dark and brooding, to see a movie that sort of just celebrates the spirit of fun.
Yeah. Well, I wanted very much to make it a very human movie. I am a father of 2 daughters, and my concern is just that every movie is political, every single movie, and everything you do about a movie is political, whether it's aesthetic or it's content. And I really feel very comfortable with this movie because it endorses my view of the world, just like any other movie I've done. I try to celebrate diversity, not only of thought, or it's not singing Kumbaya, it's just thinking that we all need each other to survive, which is a message that is on Hellboy or Devil's Backbone in equal measure. That we need to trust each other because metaphorically we're all in the same robot. You know, and if we don't trust each other, we don't move. The robot doesn't move. To be able to create one where your alternative for fun could be a non-militaristic movie. You know, I find that the action genre and the sci-fi genre have fused in the last 15 years or 20 years into almost military propaganda. Like, you can only succeed by WASP employment of superior firepower. And I really wanted to say, no, you can survive by self-sacrifice, ingenuity, by leadership, by so many other values. And the idea that the female character can actually have a valid backstory, a strong friendship with the main male character, and not have her t-shirt wet accidentally every 5 minutes. These are things that I feel comfortable with kids watching. My kids could watch it, and I feel okay. In the same way that when I did Pan's Labyrinth, I could only have made that movie because I met my daughters. And I could see their strength, and I feel I need to tell them it's okay to say no. It's okay to be disobedient. There is something, I went to Legendary at the beginning of this process, and I said, I don't want to make the movie about the time when we're winning, a winner movie. I want to show the movie about the time we were losing, and when we're the resistance, when we have no hubris, when we have only the humility to say, we depend on each other. And it's not subtle thematically. Every character, if you see it again, needs to learn to trust the other character, including the so-called bad guy. You know, and I think there's beauty on that.
And what was the experience like shooting the film? I mean, you talked about that you worked with the actors a little bit differently on Pacific Rim than on some of your previous films.
Well, two of the actors were very much into improv. Idris Elba loves to improv, but it was worth it because one of his best line, don't ever touch me again, that's improv. That came out of him. And then Charlie Day came from improv, you know, but he ended up, because I put him through such grueling action, he became very precise. Because he didn't want to do take 5. He was crawling on all fours, hurting his knees, and he got really precise. Really good. He ended up being a very technical actor. But on the beginning, I shot both of them on the beginning with 3 cameras. And with the actors, what I do is I write a biography for their characters. That is about 4 or 5 pages long. And I tell them everything they need to know, what they like, what they dislike, what zodiac sign they are, when they were born, where they were born, their whole childhood, blah, blah, blah. And we use that as what I call table work. We work together, and that changes the screenplay in pre-production. Everybody works with everybody else, we rehearse, and it changes the screenplay a little more. So, but in this movie it was a lot more loose. If you watch Pan's Labyrinth and all the other movies, I'm almost fetishistic about the camera moving with the actor and all that. Here I let them a little more loose. Idris still said, man, you're hard. I go, dude, I'm super relaxed. But I really, in this movie I was allowing them to breathe a lot more.
And how was it for you to be back behind the camera? How did it feel personally to be directing again?
Well, you know, I was really very, very conscious about making a big statement about the movie, not only creatively to deliver something in a bigger sandbox than I've ever delivered, but to show to the studio and myself that I could deliver it fiscally perfect, under budget and under schedule. So I did. I delivered on both, but that was a lot of pressure because on pre-production, I wanted to prep it more than anything. So I would visit the set of the first week. I visited more times than I've ever visited anything. And I would look for new angles, am I doing this right? And the result was the first week we were ahead already a day or 2 of shooting, on the first week of shooting. because I was over-prepared. And then I realized it was like riding a bicycle, except I seldom ride bicycles. But I remember when I did. And it was really the most fun I've had ever in a movie set. I was completely relaxed. It was exhausting. I was shooting, I was putting 18, 19-hour days, but I was enjoying it.
And you talked also about the experiences that you've had before, sort of leading up to this, the amount of visual effects work and your experiences in animation actually helping inform some of those scenes, some of the most spectacular scenes in the film.
Yeah, I think that what I did is I wanted to use everything I learned in my 3 years, for example, of apprenticeship at DreamWorks. You know, I come from a background of effects and animation, and technically I know all the lingo, but I was going to direct animated sequences, and we made some really great choices in the effects. The way the effects are done in this movie is, I assure you, unlike any other movie. We took very big risks creatively. So I wanted to be very trained, and on the fiscal side, prepping the Hobbits, and prepping the 2 Hobbit movies and the Mountains of Madness movie made me very nimble with big logistics. I had scouted, I had scheduled, I had broken down 3 really gigantic movies. So by the time Pacific Rim came, it was pretty much second nature.
Now, with the film coming out, it's got some interesting endorsements. Kanye West,
yeah,
for one. When you hear things like that, how does that make you feel?
I love it because we started screenings like this, screenings of word of mouth. When you have a strong movie, you put it out there for the audience to talk about it, you know? And we did screenings for people in sports, actors, musicians, all that. And we've been getting great responses through that. I mean, I urge you to Twitter, I urge you to Facebook, I urge you to do whatever you can to put it out there that the movies, if you like it, that you love it, and why. Because I think that when you bring in 2 genres that are known to real fans and otaku, like the kaiju eiga and the mecha, you need to tell the rest of the audience that that is not the robots you know or the monsters you know. That there's a whole tradition about this that you want to introduce. And Kanye is a guy that is really, I respect him as an artist enormously, and he also has a huge connection with anime and Japanese film and all. You know, he's very knowledgeable. Same with Reza, you know. He's a super fan of all the martial arts, anime, kaiju movies and all that. And I love when that happens. I love when I hear that. I'm actually very moved. I'm 48 and I'm still moved about a lot of shit. I'm like a kid in that sense. I really, when people show me love or appreciation for my craft, I really take it. I'm very moved by it.
You know, I think we're going to open this up to audience questions. I think we have time for just about 5 questions. And if people could come to the side of the stage.
Or we have time for a little more, but the only thing is I got to get the hell out of here real quick. Would you guys like to have 10 questions and then I get the hell out of here? Yeah. I'll be an asshole and escape. I don't think, oh, the fat bastard just left. I got to go home and sleep like a few hours. But let's do 10 questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
As they say in Mexico, what the fuck?
We got one right here.
Sorry. So I guess this week, with the release of the movie and everything, there's a lot of talk, I think, from Ron Perlman about like possible Hellboy 3. I'm sure you probably asked about this, but is there a possibility for Hellboy 3? What's going on with that?
You know, I don't know. Things happen things are so weird in life, dude, I don't know. I mean, like, life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? That John Lennon said that. And that's the same with the career. I would love to do Hellboy 3. Now, I cannot kickstart 150 million. You know, and Ron and I would love to do it together. I gotta do it before Ron has to do it on a Rascal. Shoot it on a Rascal too. So we gotta get going, but it would be great. I know the story, I know how it starts, I know how it ends, but it's the biggest one and the darkest one of the 3, you know? So let's see. I hope we're never losing hope. Things move. Big things move. Apparently, Legendary is now going to Universal. Universal has the rights. I don't know. Many things could happen. They also have the rights to Mountains of Madness. So who knows?
Thanks.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for coming out and speaking to us. My question is that, you know, one of the things with the casting for this movie is you chose not to go with any really established stars, and you actually went with a lot of TV actors who are, you know, more well known for their TV work than their movie work.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an intentional casting decision, or was that just, you know, these are the actors who came out and tried for these roles?
No, everybody that you see on the screen is my first choice. You know, there was a small moment between Mountains and Pacific Rim where I was working with Tom Cruise on Mountains, and I said, would you like to do Pentecost? But then the scheduling never worked, so we went and opened casting, and Legendary literally said, who do you want for these roles? I wanted Max Martini. I wanted Ron, obviously. I wanted Idris. I wanted Charlie. And with Legendary, the conversation was really easy. They would say, who do you want for Raleigh? And I say, there's this guy I love called Charlie Hunnam. And the discussion was really, thank you. This was pre him really becoming super famous with Sons of Anarchy or anything. And then Thomas Toll goes, yeah, Charlie's cool. That was the conversation. It was super complex. I had met Charlie for Hellboy 2. He was going to, he came and tried for The Prince, for Hellboy 2, the part that went to Luke Goss. And I really liked him. I thought this guy has such a pure heart. And you know, he's a hero that, he's a good-looking guy that I don't want to punch. which is extremely rare. And he's a guy that I think girls like. They like him without the shirt.
That's probably true.
Yes, it's true. No, but Idris, when I saw The Wire, and I love Stringer Bell, you know, it was such a great character, and I thought this is a phenomenal American actor, right? Then I meet Neil Cross in New Zealand. When I was, Neil Cross lives there, he created Luther for BBC, and I said, and I'm amazing, and I said, this American guy really nailed that London accent. And Neil Cross says, no, he's English. So I was, oh my God, and I immediately wanted him to be the character. You know, he sort of looks like the Colonel in Akira, you know, with the short hair and the suit and all that, and I needed somebody that could look like he could carry mankind. I think Idris can carry mankind. You know, and to deliver we're canceling the apocalypse, there are what, 3 actors that can say that? I'll believe them, you know? So it was first choices. Every single one of them is proof that I spend too much time on my ass watching TV. Taking notes.
Hi, Guillermo. Thank you so much for making that movie, and Hellboy was off the chart. It's one of my favorites all time.
Thank you.
My question, you've got these Sons of Anarchy guys in here. Do you like heavy metal and have the Harley Davidson?
My father was a completely insane father. He was a motorcycle champion in Mexico. He has a very strange world record that I don't want to discuss, but it has to do with motorcycles. And so the result is, my first motorcycle, he gave me my first motorcycle when I was 7. It was what is called a mini bike, and I would ride on the bike before I could ride on a bicycle. And I had a bike all the way until I married. When I was riding, I ran motocross. I was 10. Trust me, I was not going like this anymore. I was 10 for a long time. So I got 3 squares a day. Yes. So I used to run motorcycle until I had an accident with my wife early in our marriage, and I said I can't do it anymore, because if I go, then the family will suffer. So I left it, but I miss it. But right now, if I buy a bike, I'm gonna look like a dentist. With my body and a big badass bike, people are gonna say, yeah, he's an orthodontist. I don't look badass anymore. But I love bikes. An amazing experience. I used to ride 6-hour trips. I love them. Yeah.
Hi, fantastic film. I have a speculative question that I'd like you to confirm or deny, so bear with me very quickly.
Yes. Babies don't come from Paris.
In David Lynch's Blue Velvet, that's about a seemingly normal place that has a seedy underbelly with a lot of bug imagery and a villain, Frank Booth, that sustains himself with a bug-like apparatus, his gas mask. In your debut film, Kronos, you also have a seemingly normal world that has a lot of bug imagery and a seedy underbelly and a literal bug device that sustains people, as is somewhat the case in Hellboy, seedy in a normal world with Cronin's mask. Did Blue Velvet have a big influence on you?
No.
Wow.
That is a great question.
Okay.
No, I mean, I love David Lynch. Blue Velvet happens to be one that didn't apparently connect that much. I mean, my favorites are Mulholland Drive, the pilot for Twin Peaks, Eraserhead, and Elephant Man. I got nuts for those movies. But to me, the influence on Kronos was my life. In Mexico in the 60s, there was this living jewelry fashion. I don't know if you know about this or not, but they used to capture big beetles, and they would fix them into a piece of jewelry with a chain, and women would wear these living bugs on their chest. And it was very creepy. and I lived with my grandmother and as a kid, and I always thought that wouldn't it be cool if I kept a vampire in the toy box? and many other things. I was a very strange kid. I really was. I was a very odd fuck. But thank you, but sadly no. But I love David Lynch. I love his movies. That one is not one I revisit.
I was very curious about the
I still like Frank.
I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the steps that went into choreographing and shooting the massive fights in Pacific Rim.
Yes. The fact is, the Kaiju, Eiga, and Mecha genres have one thing in common that I think is important to clarify. The relationship Japan has with technology is not the guilty relationship that the West has with technology, where we say technology is bad and it will turn on us and destroy us. They fucking love technology. and they love their robots and worship them to the point where their stature is that of sort of mythical figures, mythical warriors. And that adoration extends to a degree to the kaiju. The kaiju that really became instrumental in healing Japan after World War II. And they became, as much as the yokai are part of their daily life and rituals, and they integrate them into nature and all that, I think kaijus came to symbolize things that are above human, amazing, almost elemental gods. And I wanted to show the elemental clash of those two things. So I shoot action. If you see any of my movies, including Blade, everything, I shoot action with very, very much carefully laying out the geography. I don't cross-cut the axis, I don't jump it, I do very, very much classically choreographed stuff. And I wanted to show the big shots, the majesty of the wide shots. What